Hello and welcome to the Consistency Project with E.C. Sinkowski. My name is Patrick Cummings, and every episode I have the privilege of having a discussion with EC on subject matters that range from nutrition to fitness to the choices we can all make to live a healthier, more functional life. By exploring both the principles at play and the actions worth carrying out as a result, it's our goal to get you thinking, get you moving, and get you taking more consistent steps toward optimizing your well-being. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. As always, how are you, EC?
I'm good.
We are going to do a quick bites. I feel like we haven't done a quick bites in a while. That may not be true, but it just feels like we haven't done a quick bites. Quick bites is when we take questions from listeners, from folks on social, from folks on your email list, and unpack them in a shorter format than we usually do for a full episode. So your aim is 5 questions with about 5 minutes each.
We're going to try.
Sometimes we do a good job of that and sometimes not at all. So we've got questions about 75 Hard, Perfect Amino, helping your mom lose weight, not your mom, EC, right, but just a mom out there, raw milk and metabolism. Before we dive into the first question, what's the best way, or maybe what is the way that is most likely to get a question into a future quick bites? What is let's give the secret sauce, and make it difficult. Like they have to show up at your house, knock with their left hand 3 times, bring the dog a treat, and then ask a question? Like what is the actual means and methods here?
It is more difficult than the most popular way. It is through my email list. So optimizemenutrition.com/email, largely because I have a good way to store them. Yeah. Yeah. The most popular way currently is on Instagram, which is just kind of hard to categorize screenshots very well. So better likelihood if you're on the email list.
Love it. Okay, cool.
And all you have to do is click reply to any email. It doesn't have to be like waiting for a formal call of questions.
Amazing. Okay, cool. All right, let's dive into this. First one first. This is from AJ, who asks, do you have any thoughts on 75 Hard? Is it worth doing? And maybe a quick context of what 75 Hard is, which I think maybe many people have heard of, but maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had to look it up. I mean, out of the gates, I just want people to know that I have not done it. So this is also kind of what I gleaned from the website and the welcome email. From the website, it's a mental toughness program. It's not considered a fitness program. And it's the goal of developing confidence, self-esteem, fortitude. And again, what they say on the website is that people often feel like they're kind of drifting through life. And the real problem is that they just lack mental toughness and discipline. And so the rules of 75 Hard are, 1, they have to follow a diet. It can be the diet of their choice, which is very interesting. We're going to talk about that. But it must be a structured plan designed with a physical improvement in mind. They also have to complete 2 45-minute workouts, and one of those workouts must be outside. No alcohol or cheat meals. Take a progress picture every day. Drink 1 gallon of water. Read 10 pages of a book. Those are both every day. And then if you miss a day, you have to start back at day 1. Of course, the goal is to get to 75 consecutive days. So that's the program. And I think people might be a little surprised at my opinion. I think it's pretty darn good. Cool. Remarkably good in the overall grand scheme of things. I mean, think about all the BS stuff out there, the product we're going to talk about next. Mm-hmm. All the diet hacks, butter and coffee. I'm like, okay, I get this. I get this one. The overall point is basically commit to doing some really basic habits that are meaningful. And, do I love all of the requirements? No, I'd throw out the drink a gallon of water a day immediately and maybe just replace that with drink only water as the beverage you consume.
Yep.
But I can see a lot of good in each of these concepts. Do I actually think people need 2 45-minute workouts a day? I don't. I think people just need to be consistent with one. But what I like about the 2 45-minute workouts is, just look at the amount of time that we spend scrolling on our phone. I'm sure many of us can fit in more exercise than we think initially, right? So sometimes putting more constraints on your time actually shows you how much time you have. And I think probably parents realize that quite quickly. I learned that a little bit with a puppy, not quite the same extent. And I also think the 75-day thing is good too, right? Like we aren't going to see results in 2 days. We're not going to see, 10 pounds in a week. Settle in, work hard, be consistent. And hey, let's check in 2+ months. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So all of these targets kind of at first glance, I think are very livable. They're not in the realm of crazy and all of that stuff. I think though, to make it really valuable, it's going to come down to kind of some of those choices that people make within the structure.
Mm-hmm.
The devil's in the details, right? I would not recommend both 45-minute workouts or hero CrossFit workouts.
Yep. Yep.
We're going to have to be kind of smart about intensity and activities, especially depending on what your volume is coming into this. I would consider walking your dog for 45 minutes, one of the workouts, but maybe that wouldn't be like, tough enough or something like that.
I think actually I've heard people say that counts as, I think, because one of them has to be outside. I think you said that, right? And so I think that I don't know, and I'm with you. I haven't done it. I've only got a very loose sense of what it is. But I feel like people, when I've seen other people talking about it, people coming to the defense of like a 45-minute walk outside checks two of those boxes.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's great if it does. So yeah, we have to watch kind of volume and intensity in the exercise selection. And I think probably the one where it can get a little off kilter the most is, what is the diet did you select?
Yep.
What diet did you select? And, with the 75 hard is sort of the messaging, I can see people choosing a super low calorie, super restrictive elimination diet. They get to day 5 or day 6, and then they end up binging. They have to restart, not because they need, quote, more fortitude, but they rather just need a little more sanity in their diet choices.
Yep.
So if somebody were to pick the 800-gram challenge or lazy macros, or even macros, but at an appropriate target, great. Let's do it. Let's do 75 days of that. I think that's awesome. I actually just heard this on kind of a newsletter discussion, but I think one of the main criticisms of things like this, nutrition challenges, is that after the 75 days, many people go right back to what they did before. I hear you. That happens even with the best laid nutrition plans and coaches. People fall off the plan all the time. People fall off the plan after having one-on-one, customized, highly individualized attention, right? There is no perfect plan for the forever.
Nothing that fixes it forever. Yeah.
There's nothing that fixes it forever. And if you think that your specifically designed habit plan is always going to have a much higher retention than something like this, I think you probably haven't been around long enough, a little bit of a reality check there. Now, so long as the challenge isn't something really silly and extreme, like, you're going to eat way too little and all these other things. But this is basically exercise and stick to a diet for 75 days, in my opinion. I mean, read 10 pages a day. That's not a huge volume. The water's a little whatever, but you know what I mean? Like, it's very much in the realm of the things that we talk about all the time.
Totally. Two little things. The first one is what popped in my head as you were talking about the rules is there's, to me, at least a little similarity between what we've talked about in a recent episode. I think it was with the mind diet, in the sense of like, normally restrictions lead to not very good places, but these particular restrictions are right on that kind of that challenge skill line, in the sense of like, they're hard enough to make you have to pay attention to them, but they're not so hard that you fail at them and therefore, kind of go backwards in terms of just your own mentality of like, I suck at this. I can't do it. I'm not going to do it anymore. Yeah. And so do you think that that's part of it, is like, yes, individually, like these are all generally hard, but they're not so hard that they are impossible. And therein lies kind of the magic of it, where it pushes people, but not so far that most people can't do it.
Yeah, totally. I think they're all very reasonable. Again, the 2 45-minute things, it's like, I am sure people have I don't say everybody, right? There are people who don't, but there's a lot of people who spend 45 minutes scrolling on their phone for no real reason, right? Past what they thought it was. So I think they're all very reasonable. What's interesting is one of the rules is that absolutely no alcohol or cheat meals. I certainly think we can go 75 days without alcohol. The cheat meals is interesting in the sense of, again, what diet did you set up what diet did you set up? And if your diet was no sugar, I think you can get through 75 days. I do think that type of restriction won't be as successful for people. And so it's like, okay, I am going to do macros, and I'm going to stick to macros that are not putting me into extreme caloric deficit. And within the macros, I'm going to eat relatively healthy, and I still work in the donut. Great. We've got a great 45-day plan, right? But like no cheat meals in the sense of I'm not going to go out on Saturday and just eat everything. I'm like, okay, that's not bad. So yeah, I think, again, just depending a little bit on how the application is of what they choose and what they're considering within the rule structure is really going to set it up for success. With some of that, what you're saying, it's like some of the magic is that there is a little bit of liberty to make this very normal and very doable.
Yeah. And which actually leads me to the second little point, which is what you said, which is what you're talking about with the diet and the choice. And what popped in my head is a lot of people are now probably working out, let's just call it 2 times as much as they were before. Because even if you were getting a couple workouts in a week, now doing 2 workouts, even if that workout's a 45-minute, 60-minute walk, you're now doing twice as much work than you were on a regular basis. And now you're also going to probably try to do some calorie restrictive or at least like willpower restrictive diet on top of it. To me, that's if I had to guess, that's where people fail. Is they can commit to the workouts or the working out, the moving more, but they pair that with something that is 1, hard already, but 2, doubly hard when you're also just exerting so much more energy than you normally do.
Totally. That's a great point, that they're probably going to pick a diet based off of their current experience. And yet now they're going to up the volume significantly. Why am I so hungry? Why can't I stick to this? Well,
right. Okay, cool. Love that. Cool. Let's move on to the second question. This is a combination of questions from multiple people asking roughly the same question around a supplement called Perfect Amino. And I guess now that I said it out loud, Instagram will serve me the ads, but I don't think I've seen this. But and the questions are mainly around saying or around Perfect Amino saying that most protein powders like whey are over 80% converted to sugar in the body, building more fat than muscle. And then another part of their advertising is that it contains the equivalent of 30 grams of protein, but with only a few calories, which is less than the 120 calories you would expect from 30 grams of protein from whey. So the questions are basically like, what's happening here? Yeah. What's the deal?
What's the deal?
Is this really so perfect?
Yeah. You are going to be slammed with this ad now. Believe me. I cannot get away from the ads, partially because people have sent me the ads before. And then now I go visit the website. Oh my gosh.
Go to the website. You're screwed.
Go to the website. Yeah, I'm going to start with the latter question first, which is basically like, hey, this has like 30 grams of protein in it, but the calories are really low.
Yeah.
So nutrition labels do not require calories to be shown when the product is individual amino acids instead of whole proteins. So supplements like BCAAs and Perfect Aminos, they can look like they have fewer calories than they do. Now, why we allow this, I don't really know. There are calories in these products to the same value that you would have if you just had a whey protein. So it's a little bit of deception on the label. I think some of the reason why it's allowed is because typically people aren't overeating BCAA. Like typically it's a scoop of like 3-5 grams of BCAAs. It's like, you're going to tell me that 24 calories, is really the difference in this person's day. So I think there is a little bit of question of relevance there. But yeah, so basically that's just a little bit of label trickery. But there are calories to that in that same thing as 4 calories per gram. Now, the other points mainly around like whey is converted to sugar in the body, building more fat than muscle. They also have tons of stuff on their website. They have all these claims about digestibility and less metabolic waste. And, it's interesting when you go to the website, and again, be ready for the ads after that. They have this very kind of scientific looking graph that's comparing its product to whey and beef. I can't find a gosh darn cited article on the website. So we've got these results and we've got these claims. I cannot find the evidence for those claims on the website. Now, admittedly, I probably spent 15 minutes, but still I sort of thought like under the graph would be a great place to put it. I did track down a study. I think that one of their main claims on a totally unrelated website, like somebody who I think interviewed the person, like went and found the article, which is really odd to have to do that. But anyway, it's about kind of the main graph that I want to speak to. And it's basically this idea of their protein is a very high quality compared to whey or beef. And it comes down to this idea of how protein can be measured called net protein utilization. Now, they've actually or organizations have sort of moved away from using this as the measurement system for looking at protein quality. But basically, it looks at the intake that you just took in terms of this protein product, and then how much of the nitrogen is lost in your urine. And to say, okay, of the percentage of protein that went in your mouth, did it end up as proteins in your body, in which case you would not have lost it in urine. And so the assumption that the products like this want you to believe is that this means that all the protein that went in went directly to your muscles. to your biceps, right? You increase your muscle mass,
Specifically.
right? When in reality, we don't really know what the body is doing with the amino acids. Like we want them to go to our muscle mass, but again, we don't have like a directive that enables us to say, no, send this, to my glutes or something like that, right? Or send this to my thighs or something like that. So if we wanted to know if this product was truly helping people gain muscle mass in a more effective way than whey protein or just helping them gain muscle mass generally, we're actually going to have to measure muscle mass. We don't get to measure net protein utilization, right?
Shocker.
I know. We actually have to look at muscle mass, and it's going to happen over kind of a longer period of time. And I think, then once you realize, okay, there's lots of bodybuilders who have put on muscle mass who are not using Perfect Amino. Like, how did they get that done, right? Like, it turns out that we don't need this kind of perfect product. And so that claim, though, specifically that it's being converted to sugar, building more fat than muscle, I don't even know how to counter that, really. Protein will, in fact, be burned off for energy like sugar, especially when taken in excess, but converted to fat, like, no. If you eat a very, very high amount of protein, it's theoretically possible, but is it practically occurring? No. And so this is where it's like, it drives me crazy. It's like they have these wild claims and they don't have the evidence to back it up at all. And so it's like, I don't even know where they're coming up with some of these claims. It's like people will send me this stuff. It's like, what about this? And that's like, I don't even know how they came up with that. So long-winded way to say this is a lot of hype. And if people are seeing results from the product, it's either A, placebo, or B, they actually have just increased their overall protein intake.
Got it. Okay. Next question is from Connie. She asks, my mom is claiming that she only loses weight when eating unprocessed meat like a steak, but she doesn't lose weight when she eats protein powder, protein bars, lunch meat, and she even claims that she won't lose weight when eating chicken, unprocessed chicken. How do I explain to her that if she isn't losing weight, it's because she isn't in a caloric deficit? Or is there truth to what she's claiming? I keep trying to explain to her the importance of keeping protein intake high as she ages for quality of life, but I am not sure she's convinced.
Yeah, Connie, you are right. It is all about that caloric deficit. I think there's a couple problems here. The first is I don't think your mom understands the total number of calories she's eating. We talk about this all the time. I think 95% of people do not understand the number of calories they are truly eating. And they also don't understand how calories are made up of these 3 macronutrients, and that the macronutrients all sum to that total number of calories. And that's what results in weight changes, but over long periods of time, not, in this 24-hour minute. And so I think she, like many, many people, think it's just individual small food choices that are controlling their diet. They're not seeing how those individual food choices are changing that calorie macro total picture that I just said. And so this is why taking data on your diet in a comprehensive way is so important, is so valuable. I can't tell you how many, not just individuals, but coaches come through my masterclass and they're like, oh, wow, my perception about my diet does not actually equal reality. This is very common. This is very common. So my bet with that kind of general explanation is that when your mom eats steak, the whole day sort of shifts. That the steak is more likely filling than the protein bars and the shakes and potentially the foods that she eats with it. Maybe the steak is more like a meal and then like the deli turkey is more like a snack. And so that's what a lot of people miss when they, quote, make this one change. It's like, oh, I'm just eating steak. And it's like, what are the downstream effects of that one change so that the entire shift of the macros and the calories change, right? And that's what they're not really seeing. Maybe when she does more of the shakes and the bars, she's just more hungry. And so she's snacking more. Voila. Then we have the more calories, not weight loss, right? But she's focused on, oh, I just had a bar. It's like, no, your whole calories went somewhere else. So basically, Connie, just welcome to nutrition coaching and education.
We made t-shirts.
I know. Welcome aboard. Much of what people are trying to do are small changes. And I don't want to be against small changes. So many times these small changes really do add up to significant changes for people. It's just that we often don't have the perspective of how that small change is or is not fitting into the bigger picture. And understanding that bigger picture isn't a tip, isn't a hack. It takes time and patience to kind of go through that for your diet. There are plenty of people, who listen and understand these concepts, but have not actually gone through the process themselves in their diet to kind of see that big picture for a variety of reasons. And I don't know what to tell you about that. Like, there's no convincing that can be done, right? People will take action on that if and when they want to take action. And unfortunately, they might take action in a way that you don't agree with or doesn't actually lead them in a positive direction, right? So I think the takeaway is I wouldn't try any more convincing. I'd probably say something like, weight loss just comes down to total calories. I don't think you're understanding how your choices are changing the total calories. And that will be plenty to say to get a gauge of whether or not she's interested in learning more from you or she's interested in continuing to do what she wants to do.
Love it. All right. Next question is from Erica with a K. She asks, would you comment on the consumption of raw milk? Curious as to your insights on its health benefits.
Yeah. I don't recommend it. Don't recommend raw milk consumption. This one actually brought back some memories. So I've said before, like, most of the questions and the issues that we talk about, like, I either believed and did myself. So back in my Boston days, there was a period of time I drove 2 hours each way to buy raw milk from a farm because it was illegal. That. Yeah, it was illegal to sell in stores. I think it probably still is. So you had to buy it directly from the farm. And I eventually became part of a milk co-op. So I didn't have to do all the driving every weekend or whatever. And I probably did that for a year or so. And it was all under kind of the belief it was more healthy, more natural, better, all that stuff, right? So in the show notes, I'm going to link to a page from the FDA, and it's called Raw Milk Misconceptions and the Danger of Raw Milk Consumption. And I know that we have kind of this general mistrust of the government, but I think it's a really great resource because they actually take 14 claims about raw milk, which is way more than I kind of was aware that people have about raw milk. And they go one by one and they give peer-reviewed scientific evidence for it, And so to keep this episode from being an hour long, I'm just going to kind of touch on 3 of the ones that they bring up. One being raw milk does not cure or treat asthma or allergy. The second one being raw milk is not nutritionally superior to pasteurized milk. And the third one is that raw milk is not safer than pasteurized milk. And so these were definitely ones that I believed raw milk was more beneficial than pasteurized milk. Regarding the treating asthma and allergy, I guess there was a study that's kind of just been continually misinterpreted. It was in 2007, and they found an inverse relationship between farm milk consumption and asthma and allergy. And it's become, from what I understand, sort of the poster child for raw milk enthusiasts. And it does have, weaknesses of being an association study, of course. But the real problem is farm milk has been misinterpreted in the lay press to be the equivalent of raw milk. When the paper itself says, hey, we can't draw conclusions about raw versus pasteurized because half of the farms boil their milk. So it's not even a study about raw milk, and yet it's being used as hey, raw milk is, fixing these issues. The next one was about raw milk being nutritionally superior. The pasteurization process does not change protein quality, digestibility, fat composition, mineral or vitamin content, or bioavailability, except for potentially vitamin C. Vitamin C does tend to be susceptible to heating and therefore in the pasteurization process. But milk isn't really a good source of vitamin C. So it's okay, are you really dependent on that for that? No. So it begs the question of whether or not that even matters. But then the last point that I really wanted to touch on, because I certainly believe this myself, is that pasteurized milk is definitely safer than raw milk. Because when you look at the total amount of raw milk outbreaks, it might not seem that many, but when you consider that less than 1% of people drink raw milk in the US anyway, it's actually really high frequency, especially relative to pasteurized. And so that's what pasteurization is doing. It's killing off the bacteria such as E. coli that can be a result of just handling the product. And, it's just sort of this dichotomy that, natural is always better. And people will talk about kind of the hidden dangers in some of the food. And some of the hidden dangers in our food are these bacterial contaminations, the viruses, from just, having a product that's on the farm and being handled by different humans. It's not additives. It's not plant lectins that are these hidden dangers. It's actual food contamination, right? And so that's what pasteurization is doing for us. It's getting rid of the most risky aspect of milk consumption while not altering its nutritional composition. And so I just think this is another great example. It's no, this is a perfect example of where the modern day invention or improvement is better than, quote, natural. I guess I would say I'm not like, I don't think every raw milk consumption is with hazard. But once we start looking at food systems and distribution, we have to start really thinking about these food safety issues in terms of contamination.
Mm-hmm. Got it. All right. Last question we've got is from Jeff. He asks or says, I feel like metabolism is such clickbait and false science, quote unquote, rev up your metabolism, fix your slow metabolism, etc. I assume there are actual considerations, but I've read enough from people who came off The Biggest Loser, the show, I imagine, which is a topic unto itself, he says, that have been like, I quote unquote, ruined my metabolism. I'd love to hear your thoughts and perspective.
Yeah, there is a lot of clickbait in revving up and slowing metabolisms for sure. So when we hear metabolism, we just want to think about it as the calories you need or the calories you burn, aka calories out, in that calories in, calories out equation. So speeding it up would be you need more calories, slowing down would be you need less calories. I think everyone just inherently is like slow is bad. It's not, so long as the correct intake is there. So maybe I only need 2,000 calories a day and you need 2,500. My metabolism in absolute terms is slower than yours. But if I eat 2,000 calories a day and you eat 3,000, I maintain my weight while you gain yours, even though you have a faster metabolism, right? So a big part of what is missing in many of these fast and slow metabolisms, it's like, well, we can't get away from the fact that intake still matters here. Like, what are you taking in relative to this fast and slow metabolism? We have to consider that overall balance because that's calories in minus calories out is the net change in weight. And so I think people overly fixate on metabolism, the calories out, forgetting about their intake, right?
Yep.
So that's missing. And then there are things that can increase metabolism, but not in any real meaningful way, like spicy foods. They can increase your heartbeat. And so they can elevate your core temperature a little bit. You know, when that happens, your heart beating faster, that takes more energy. And so, yes, you're burning more calories, but it's like for a very short period of time. And how much spicy food are you eating?
I was just going to suggest maybe a whole new diet, the spicy food diet, all day long.
Like, you're just not going to eat jalapeno all day, like, right?
Don't ruin my new diet.
I know. So,
you know,
people will talk about that and it's just like, okay, maybe we burn 2, 3, 4 more calories. It's just sort of like, we're not going to focus on this, right? Now, what actually increases or decreases your metabolism on a larger scale would be exercise. You know, and this can happen kind of in the short term. And maybe I go for a hike 20 miles today. That's a considerable increase. I'm going to definitely need more calories. So I could say that I boosted my metabolism today because I just burned so many more. When we increase our volume so much like that in any single go, we also tend to eat back the food that we just burned because we're hungry. And so this is where the balance still comes into play that, yeah, maybe I boosted my metabolism to need more calories. That balance could still have it such that I'm now consuming the difference in what I just burned because of hunger. Right. Another way that
75 hard a little
bit. Totally. When you have that second workout of the day, right? So again, it's like, okay, maybe I did boost my metabolism, but has my intake changed? We also have the potential, and this is probably, I think, the quote best, I guess, way to boost your metabolism would be to focus on a little bit longer term period, and that would be to increase our lean mass. I'm sure we've talked about that one before, right? When you have more lean mass on the body, just sitting here chatting with you, sitting here doing work, I end up burning more calories at rest as well as doing my workout. And so therefore, the number of calories I need any single day goes up, but it's again, a slow process over time. Okay. To get into kind of his next point though, I do also want to mention, I mentioned how like, hey, if you increase your volume in one day, yes, you burn more calories, but you tend to eat it back. So that's meaning that calories out affects calories in. It also turns out that calories in affects calories out, meaning how much you eat any day also affects how much you burn. Because the body tries to adapt to burn off extra calories that you eat or tries to be conservative when you undereat. And this is not always through our direct conscious control. You might become more or less efficient in energy production. You might become more or less fidgety in your seat. You might become more or less motivated to get up and do things. But this is why that when you over or under eat 3,500 calories, it doesn't exactly have you gain or lose 1 pound. The body is making these adjustments, but it's not a perfect system. So there is some point of overeating. There is some point of undereating that does in fact result in net changes in the weight. But so this is also why you hear people talk about, oh, well, eating more can boost your metabolism. It does in the sense of, yes, you will burn through some more of those calories, but it doesn't mean that you're going to lose more weight. Maybe you're just burning more of the more food that's coming in. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we have a net change overall. So again, a lot of this boosting metabolism is kind of just a short-sighted view of things. And I would say that 90% of people, maybe higher than that, 99% of people who think their metabolism is ruined or damaged, they just really don't have an accurate assessment of what they're eating, which we already just talked about. Okay, final point on The Biggest Loser. We did talk about this in a bonus episode, but it's no longer available, so it's great to just touch on it again. The abridged version here is The Biggest Loser. That's that TV show, right? Very extreme diets, 1,000, maybe 1,200 calories a day, and they have about like 6 hours of exercise. And of course, people are trying to lose weight, typically at least 100 pounds. Now, they've done some studies on these individuals after the show, and it does look like some of them have a slower metabolism than what you would expect for their height and weight. So now they're at a certain height and weight. You compare that to somebody else who did not go on The Biggest Loser, who has the same height and weight, and they get less calories. It does seem like it was the extreme caloric deficit of the show combined, this is the really important part, combined with the severe exercise that may have in fact depressed their metabolism. And it's really because their metabolism responded to those extreme demands. It was a way for them to get through all of that exercise volume on such little food. Like their body became very efficient, right? Now, here's the thing. The other studies that have looked at this idea of like a damaged metabolism, so to speak, is we don't see the same type of adaptation that we see with The Biggest Loser. Even in cases where the diets were very extreme, very low calorie, but they did not have an exercise component, there isn't any kind of, quote, lasting damage, for lack of a better word. So something definitely appears odd with The Biggest Loser participants. More work needs to be done there. There's a Kevin Hall paper in the show notes. But the practical takeaway here is don't use that as a model for weight loss and you're going to be okay. Right? Don't do a super severe caloric deficit, and especially don't do it combined with a ton of exercise, and your metabolism is just fine.
Excellent. Love it. Thank you, EC. Again, as a reminder, optimizeme.com/email. Nope, optimizemenutrition.com/email, right?
Yes.
Got it. All right. Didn't want to mess that up. If you want to get a question into the queue, we will get it into a future Quick Bites episode. Just a reminder, if you are not subscribed or following wherever you are listening to this, please do. That will ensure you do not miss a future episode. EC and I will be back next week for another episode of the Consistency Project.